joining us on the show to preview the NFL draft from not only a Giants perspective, but also from a football perspective, is the co-host of Review and Preview. And Hank, your co-host over at Big Blue Avenue, and that is my good buddy, Tom Scavetta. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Morning, guys. It's draft week. How's it going? Johnny, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, Tom. I'm doing great, and thank you so much for joining us. So, Tom, I was saying to Hank before the show, and, in these couple of weeks leading up to the draft starting this Thursday, that, I'm excited as a Giants fan because I think there's a bunch of different ways that we could go here with the 5th and the 7th pick overall. If you've been following with the mock drafts, I know you've had your own mock draft as well. They've been linked to several different players. I know who I particularly like, but we know that the Giants need help on both sides of the ball. But when you look at this draft, it is a very big lineman draft. But where do you think the best player at number 5 for the Giants right now?
The best player at number 5 for the Giants. Now, I think we could all agree the consensus is you want to fill the right tackle void at number 5 overall. I think Evan Neal is the best lineman in this draft, not because of his high floor, but his versatility. When he played at Alabama, he was originally a left guard. His sophomore year played at right tackle, and then this past year played at left tackle. So he has the versatility to play anywhere on the offensive line. So I like his versatility. I think he can slide in and play that right tackle position beautifully. The only question is, what's Houston going to do at number 3, right? Because they could go either way. They could go lineman. They could go defense. So the ideal pick at number 5 is absolutely Evan Neal if he is still on the board.
Yeah, certainly. And then, you look down to number 7, and I think there's a couple of ways the Giants could go at 7 here. And that could be, either another offensive player. They talked about defensive player, whether it's Gardner or even Thibodeau if he falls down that far, which I don't think he's going to. Or I even have thought of the possibility of the Giants even trading that 7th pick, of course, for the right package. But considering where the Giants are, with their team, and even looking ahead to next year, because there's still no guarantee with Daniel Jones's future, I'm not against trading that 7th pick overall. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I'm not against either, and I've spoken with Hank about this numerous times. Joe Schoen is open to all options, right? You want to trade back, fine, but you need the right partner to do it, and you need the right return. If the Giants are going to trade back, I want at least 2 early picks. I want to pick later on in the first round, and then I want to pick early to mid-second round on top of 36. So the way I look at it is, if you trade back, you can go after a Jordan Davis, a guy who fills a gaping hole at defensive tackle. If you stick at number 7 overall, if the Jets don't take Sauce Gardner, that's the pick, because you need to fill the cornerback hole. Wink Martindale mentioned his press man scheme. You want to blitz the quarterback, you need good coverage. And let's face it, majority of sacks in the NFL are coverage sacks. So with the rumors about James Bradbury possibly departing, clearing up some cap space, you want to bring in Sauce Gardner at number 7. But unfortunately, I feel like he's too good to pass up if you're the Jets at number 4 overall. Now, my second option is, if they do go Sauce Gardner, a guy who I think is going to slip down to number 7 is Kayvon Thibodeau, right? For some reason, guys don't like him. Like Dan Campbell doesn't like him. There's discrepancy about who Jacksonville wants to take at number 1, whether it's Hutchinson or Walker. So it leaves Kayvon Thibodeau because, in my personal opinion, yes, the Jets could take him at 4, but I think he's not afraid of the big market. Carolina, don't think they'll take him at 6. I think they'll go either quarterback or Charles Cross. Not to mention, if the Giants do stick at number 7, Cross could be an option if we go elsewhere at number 5, because the Giants are in love with him as well. But the ideal scenario would be to get Neal at 5 and then Gardner at 7. But in my mock draft, I have the Jets taking Gardner, so I have Kayvon Thibodeau falling to number 7 overall to the New York Football Giants, which just seems so far-fetched, but we've seen this before, guys. There's this big-name guy every year that just falls. And I think if he's there at number 7, I don't know if you guys agree, he has to – I mean, Joe Schoen literally has to run to the podium and make that pick himself.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely a Thibodeau guy too. Another guy who I really like watching on film. And again, Tom, like you alluded to, if this is a guy who can really play well in the New York market and he wants to thrive there, I don't see what the big deal, why you would even consider passing on him.
No, I agree. I think he's really good. He's more of a 4-eye, if you ask me, but he can play the 5-tech position as well, which is something the Giants might look to do. You look at the defensive line right now, it's Dexter Lawrence and it's Leonard Williams. That's it. They don't have a nose tackle, right? They were unable to replace Dalvin Tomlinson efficiently last year. Austin Johnson was okay, but he left for the LA Chargers. Danny Shelton was a failed experiment. So now you're looking at who could potentially fill in that void. You could move Lawrence inside to the nose tackle position and put Thibodeau on the opposite side of Leonard Williams, and then there's your 3-down line, right? And I'd be fine with that. But, I mean, we'll definitely see what happens. I'm not so sure what the Giants are going to do because of the new regime. If Gettleman was GM, I feel like we'd have more of an idea of where the Giants are going here. But with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll in command, you could only guess, right? I mean, we're 2-3 days out. Who knows?
Absolutely. Tom Scavetta from Review and Preview and Big Blue Avenue joining us here on the show. Tom, just keeping it on the Giants here for a moment. There's been reports this week about Kadarius Toney being possibly shopped, or even, Slayton even being a possibility of being dealt. What are your thoughts about possibly, those guys being rumored to be dealt, and are you against that?
So I'll start with Toney first, if that's okay. 7 injuries last year to 7 different body parts, 2 times on the COVID list, 2 positive COVID tests, and quite frankly, he just couldn't stay on the football field. There's been a lot of drama with him. I'm not going to call out any reporters, but the original source of that report, very unreliable source. So I'm not buying these Kadarius Toney trade rumors. Financially, it does not make sense. Maybe in a year or two it could, because obviously he's not a Joe Schoen guy. He did report to camp on Saturday, or voluntary mini camp, the voluntary workouts. So I think right now there's downtime. There's not much to talk about with the Giants. So somebody was looking for a story that they could pick on and get clicks. And that's what happened there with Kadarius Toney. However, is there truth that Joe Schoen is taking calls on him? Sure. I think Joe Schoen mentioned he's open to all options, right? But I don't think trading Kadarius Toney is a smart move at all. I'm not really buying that one. However, I am buying that Darius Slayton is more of an option to be moved, and here's why. Again, player who struggled to get on the field, 5th-round pick who turned out to be an above-average player for us in his rookie year. Fortunately, the last 2 years have not been that. So I don't know what his value would be. He would clear up a little bit of cap room if you were to deal him. I don't think he'll be traded on draft night. I think if you want to deal him, you deal him closer to the start of the season, being that he is entering a contract year. So whoever would be the recipient of this trade will only be getting him for 1 year anyway. Then you'd have to make a decision on him. And now with the restructure of Sterling Shepard, or more of a pay cut is what I should say, it leaves you thinking, what's the future of this Giants wide receiver room? Are they trying to draft a wide receiver at 36 overall? Can they take one in the 3rd round? Sky Moore has been an option. Watson as well, I think out of North Dakota, something like that. So there are guys out there who could be relevant receivers for the Giants that could fit what Brian Daboll is looking for in his offense. So I think there's not much truth to the Kadarius Toney rumor. Darius Slayton, there might be a little bit more truth, but neither are happening anytime soon.
Absolutely. Take away, Hank. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Slayton, I agree with. I think after that really good season, it was just a shame that he really struggled to stay on the field. And I think that drop in the Washington game, I really felt bad for him too, because he was another guy that, Tom, I know you and I pretty much thought he was going to be a diamond in the rough. And didn't we compare him to well-dressed Amani Toomer? You knew I had to quote Berman on you guys.
We interviewed a license plate guy about a year ago who is probably the biggest Giants fan that I know. And he loved our reference of Darius Slayton to Amani Toomer.
Yes, that was awesome.
Similar build, and Slayton's smaller than he looks. He's only 6'1". he plays like he's 6'2", 6'3". He plays a lot bigger. He is a deep threat, but Giants drafted Toomer in round 2. They drafted Slayton in round 5. So there's the comparison for you. There's a huge drop off. Toomer played at Michigan. Slayton played at Auburn. So again, both good college schools, but unfortunately, Slayton hasn't done much. It did take Toomer a little bit to get his footing with the Giants as well. He was overshadowed by Ike Hilliard for a little bit, despite being drafted before him in 1996. So I'm kind of at odds right now at what the Giants are going to do at wide receiver. But Joe Schoen, they're retooling a few players. But guys, this is the closest thing the Giants have seen to a full rebuild in quite some time.
Yep. And by the way, as far as Kadarius Toney goes, I also happen to agree with Tom. The idea of trading away a first-round wide receiver after what really was a rough season for him due to things really mostly out of his control, I think the idea of that happening is kind of ridiculous too. So just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I mean, when you come to the draft, you always, hear rumors and speculation before the draft. And like you said, if the right package was out there, you could consider it. But I agree. I don't think they're going to shop Toney at all. But when you look at the draft now, top down, there have been a lot of mock drafts from a lot of people. Tom, I know you guys have done a mock draft over on your show. So who do you have as the number 1 overall pick? Because now we're starting to see some different names up there at the top.
Well, Khan wants Hutchinson, and it's not a full guarantee because there's chaos there in the front office. One guy wants Hutchinson, the other guy wants Walker. Trayvon Walker going number 1 overall is all smoke. It's going to be Aiden Hutchinson come draft night. He'll be the number 1 overall pick. I mean, the season he had at Michigan was outstanding. I mean, he elevated them to the college football playoff, a team with a pedestrian quarterback that relied heavily on their running game, needed a great defense. You had the combination of him and David Ojabo, which were outstanding this season, not to mention Daxton Hill in the secondary was very solid as well at that third level. So you're kind of looking at what he can provide to Jacksonville and what Jacksonville needs. I feel like Trayvon Walker really had just this one insane season, as where Hutchinson has been consistently getting better throughout the years. So he would be my number 1 overall pick because he's a game changer for Jacksonville. As where Trayvon Walker, he's not as sure of a thing, which is crazy for me to say because he played on that Georgia Bulldogs defense, which was ranked number 1 in the nation in a lot of categories last year. So, but I'm going Hutchinson.
Yeah, I agree. I've watched his games at Michigan, and I think he is the number 1 talent overall. And I agree with you. I think it's just all smoke when it comes to Walker. Not to take anything away from him, but I think Hutchinson works there at number 1. Tom, the other New York team in town, the Jets, also have a lot of interesting options at 4 and 10. There have been reports that they're not willing to get rid of that 10th pick. They weren't when Tyreek Hill was available. Even now with Deebo Samuel being out there, Jets could be an option, but they don't seem like they want to trade that 10th overall pick. So we've heard what you think about 4, but what do you think 4 and 10 overall for the Jets? Where do they go?
Yeah, I think the Jets are smart, like you mentioned. They're taking Sauce at number 4, although I wouldn't put it past them to get Kayvon Thibodeau as well. I think it's time to get a defensive player in there, a defensive game changer player, which is something they don't have. I think that's the pick at number 4. I would lean Sauce. Number 10, look, it's tough because you drafted Cross won't be there at 10. I think he's going to Seattle at 9. I personally think they need to go wide receiver. I really do. They need somebody. Denzel Mims is not the answer. They have good players. They just lost Jamison Crowder. I mean, they still have Elijah Moore, and I'm forgetting the other receiver they have who's quite decent. But
Braxton Berrios, they signed him.
That's the other one, right? But you need somebody opposite of Elijah Moore. Who is that player going to be? When I look at receivers that fit their scheme, I'm looking at 2 players. I'm looking at Garrett Wilson and Drake London. I'm looking at Garrett Wilson because what he was able to do at Ohio State. I mean, in my opinion, he's the pure number 1 wide receiver in this draft. You can't go wrong with an Ohio State wide receiver, in my personal opinion. Now you look at Drake London. Everyone's like, oh, Pac-12 receiver, that can't be the first receiver off the board. But Drake London he's an insane specimen, we like to call him. He's huge. He's a legitimate red zone threat, something the Jets could need to help out Zach Wilson. So if I had to pick between Wilson and London, I would lean Wilson. But you have to remember, what are the Falcons going to do at number 8? They're decimated in the receiving core. Are they going to go quarterback? Are they going to go wide receiver? Because right now their number 1 is Zacchaeus. They could, in my opinion, the Falcons should address receiver in the 2nd round. But at this time, I have the Jets taking Garrett Wilson at number 10 overall. And unfortunately, I think Sauce is going at 4. If the Jets are smart, and Joe Douglas has proved to be that so far, unfortunately, that division is just manifest, right? It's tough for them to do anything when you have teams like the Bills, the Patriots, and the Dolphins. And when you look at what the Jets have to go up against coverage-wise in that division, you have Tyreek Hill now on Miami Dolphins entering the division. You have Devontae Parker heading to the New England Patriots along with Jacoby Myers. You have Stephon Diggs on the Buffalo Bills along with Gabriel Davis. Gabriel Davis erupted in that playoff game last year. How are Bryce Hall and DJ Reed going to compare about those guys? Not very well. The Jets must take Ahmad Sauce Gardner at number 4 overall, in my opinion, because they do have a decent D-line with Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers. I mean, they have Carl Lawson, who's a decent pass rusher. So I think they could wait. They shouldn't go Thibodeau. Sauce at 4, Wilson at 10.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, another big thing that gets talked about during the draft are trades, Tom. And what possible deals? I see one for Carolina, but what possible trade do you see, if any, going down on day 1 for any team?
It's tough, right? Because this year, this quarterback class is not as eye-popping. I think I'm not the biggest fan of this quarterback class, but I think people are Debbie Downing it just a little bit too much. There is potential here. I do like Matt Corral a lot. Unfortunately, his injury really hurt him. I think it's more about teams trading back this year than teams trading up. Last year, we were on a show, and I made a prediction that the Bears were going to trade up to get a quarterback. And that happened to be true. So unfortunately, it was with the Giants because of what happened with the pick before between Dallas and Philly. But I think this year, I don't see teams trading up for a quarterback. I don't think it would be smart to take a quarterback any pick before number 6 at Carolina. If the Panthers really do want Kenny Pickett, and if that's the route they want to go, fine. But I think it's more about teams trading back, Johnny. I think the Giants are a real possibility to trade back. I know Atlanta has a lot of draft picks already. If they want to trade back from number 8, they can, but that number 8 pick is a valuable one. I'm trying to think of who else is really up there that could trade back, because I think Houston, I don't know who they really like at number 3. I think they might go Icky, but I'm not so sure. If you want to talk about a team trading up, it could be the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they really want a guy like a Willis or a Ritter, who I'm not very high on Willis due to his competition level in college. But I do think that there are some teams out there that could potentially trade up. Watch out for the New Orleans Saints as well. And I think they're at number 16. There's rumors that Pickett could fall down to them as well if Carolina doesn't go quarterback. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. But I think watch out for teams, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, like the Atlanta Falcons in regards to trading back. And there was one other I just said. I can't remember it off the tip of my tongue. But, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the main team that I'm looking at to see if they potentially trade up.
Yeah, and I think also because you have so many teams that have multiple first-round picks this year, that's why you could hear the rumors of. I'll throw one out at you that I kind of thought about in the car ride last week, and that was when Deebo Samuel was being rumored to be shopped around. I know that John Lynch said that he doesn't see the possibility of that happening. But on the Panthers, I had maybe the worst quarterback situation in the NFL last season. I would be looking into talking to San Francisco and trying to get not only Deebo, but Jimmy Garoppolo over there. Because Garoppolo really is damaged goods right now coming off that injury. and you really don't know what you're going to be. So if I'm the Panthers, I'd be calling up John Lynch over there in San Francisco and seeing what you want to get Deebo and Garoppolo over there and changing the way that team is. Because if you get both of those guys on that team, you know what, you become a playoff contender with how weak the NFC is in general, especially that NFC South outside of the Buccaneers.
Now, I don't really understand why Deebo wants out of San Francisco. You just made the NFC Championship game with Jimmy G. You had a career year there. The offensive line is outstanding. You have another great receiver across from him in Brandon Ayuk, who is very talented as well. And you have George Kittle. Why would you want to leave that situation and potentially head to a team like the Carolina Panthers? I don't really understand it. Yes, Mike McDaniel just left for Miami. Maybe he wants to go there, but they already have Waddle and Hill. Doesn't really make sense. So where could Samuel be headed? I'm not so sure. Haven't really thought too much into this because, again, it's easy to want to trade out, but the hard part is finding a trade partner. Again, maybe the New Orleans Saints, maybe the Saints need a receiver. I mean, they desperately need one, right? They're linked to Chris Olave mid-first round, so maybe they go and get Deebo Samuel. I like the point you bring up, Johnny. Garoppolo and Samuel. The only issue I have with that is who's going to bite on that? Are they going to bite on that because they already traded for Darnold last year? That didn't work. Are they going to trade for a quarterback again? I think they're better off drafting a quarterback because Matt Rule really, his tenure as the Panthers head coach relies on the development of a young quarterback. I don't know if a 29, 30-year-old Jimmy G coming in is really going to give Carolina the answer that they need. Although I won't completely argue against that point you made. I feel like there's other options out there for Deebo that would make a lot more sense. Kansas City as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that Kansas City, I know this is a big wide receiver draft, but the Chiefs were another one that I was thinking of possibly trading up. And I know they've got 2 late first rounders. And this, again, is a very big wide receiver draft too. But they could be somebody that moves up to try and get a receiver, maybe even like a Drake London, like you said, if they wanted to make that big of a push. Because, you know, it's crazy because a lot of people are downplaying the Chiefs. And I understand why, because if you look in depth why, but I still think they have the best quarterback in that division too. So that's an interesting team to watch as well.
Yeah, no, if they get him, that would definitely lessen the blow for them of losing Tyreek Hill. Could even make the argument that it might be like maybe an upgrade, because I've often said that Deebo was one of the most underrated receivers in the league, and you look at that speed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the AFC West right now, and the Chiefs could potentially use him. Imagine the Raiders get him, throw him in there with Renfro and Devontae Adams. I mean, I feel like the AFC West could be where he's headed because he won't have to travel that far from San Francisco, and that division is already stacked as it is. So if I had betting odds on that, it would probably be the AFC West. The Chargers as well, they could use a guy opposite. I know they just re-signed Mike Williams, but again, you know, the NFL nowadays, it's a passing league. You want 3 good receivers on your roster. And with the way that division is trending, you need weapons, right? So I do think people are downplaying the Chiefs a little bit. I still think they have an outstanding team. They rebuilt their offensive line, which is nice. Unfortunately, Kelsey's getting a little bit older, but he's shown no signs of regression by any means. And they just brought in Juju. They brought in Valdez-Scantling. They do have Mecole Hardman. And we know anybody in the Chiefs' offensive system just so happens to flourish. And not to mention, they still have Eric Bieniemy there. So that combination of him and Andy Reid is still intact. So can you really bet against the Chiefs winning the division in the AFC West? I don't think so yet, because you have a first-year coach in Vegas. You have a first-year coach in Denver. You have a second-year coach in LA, the Chargers, who made some questionable calls last year, a little bit too liberal as far as going for it on 4th down. There's a lot of questions with those other 3 teams. The only question with Kansas City is them losing Tyreek Hill. Is that really going to hurt them that much as far as winning the division? I'm not so sure. I would love to see another team win that division, but if Deebo Samuel goes to Kansas City, man, I think it's pretty much a lock.
I agree. I think a lot of people are downplaying the Chiefs way too quick. And let's just remember, again, as I said, they do have the best quarterback of those four in that division, and that's going to mean a lot as well.
And
I mean,
potentially the best center in football that fell to them in the second round last year.
absolutely. Yep. It's crazy because, the AFC has like 10 Pro Bowl quarterbacks, and some of them are not going to make the playoffs next season. It's just that stacked. And, when the schedule gets released on May the 12th, I think you're going to see a lot of Sunday night and Monday night AFC West matchups for sure. But, as I said, this draft is going to be very, very interesting, not only from a local angle for our Giants, but as a whole, because, really, I mean, it's not a quarterback draft. It's a lineman draft. It's a wide receiver draft. So a bunch of ways that a bunch of different teams can go. And I know we'll be glued into it here. And I know you'll be glued into it as well, Tom. And thanks so much for giving us out. Of course, Tom Scavetta, the host of Review and Preview, which you can check out Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Review and Preview Sports Network, and also the co-host along with Hank on Big Blue Avenue. Tom, thanks so much for giving us a few minutes here today, and enjoy the draft, and we'll definitely have you back on again real soon, all right?
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a great show going for you. Really appreciate it. And I'll be conversing with you guys come draft night as to who we select. So really appreciate it.
We
will really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll be locked in for sure. Thank you, Tom.
Tom, always a pleasure, my guy.
Take care.